מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום עליכם מלאכי השורש מלאכי.
And do not show favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit. Exodus 23:3. In the eyes of the Lord, positive discrimination is such as hateful thing as negative discrimination. In a humanistic society like ours, influenced by socialist, communist, liberal ideals, the application and love of work tends to become something despicable and shameful. The resulting fruits are also seen as being the exploitation of those who in many cases simply refuse to work. The man blessed by both his hands' work is less respectable in the eyes of public opinion and is no longer considered as an example to be followed. Modern man has only one idea in mind: get rich as soon as possible by working as little as possible. This way, many resign themselves, seeing that they have no chance of getting rich in this way. They choose poverty and refuse to work. Hard workers are thus quickly plagued by all kinds of slanders as to the questionable origin of their wealth. Jealousy coupled with laziness is a merciless enemy. Of course, there are many rich people who owe their fortune to all kinds of sins, but here I would limit myself to analyzing the cases where people receive what is due to them, when it is the Lord who blesses men, regardless of whether they are believers or not, and according to the labor they achieved. Many poor people are sinking because of their laziness, their withdrawal, and their refusal to fight for living. It is clear that poverty today became a real lifestyle, which is often consciously chosen. This stems not only from laziness, but also from a frenzied self-esteem preventing people from accepting someone's orders or being told what to do. It is in fact the violation of Commandment 77, the one of the respect of the rulers. It is unfair to favor someone simply because he is poor. Even in their case, you can't judge a book by its cover. The rich man can sometimes be right in the face of a poor man. It is not always the poor who is right. For the rich man has not necessarily enriched himself at others' expense, and the poor are often their own oppressors. The little money they have, they often spend it on cigarettes, alcohol, or games, instead of investing it step by step in order to go up the slope. Appearances are deceiving more and more in this sense nowadays. We can often witness the way some people are able to use their defaults, should they be corporeal, monetary, or spiritual, to make life difficult for those who have received more than they did. I have seen hysterical little sisters screaming all day long so that her elder brother was constantly beaten by their parents without even asking questions about what happened. He was automatically held responsible for his sister's shoutings, since he was the male, the taller and the stronger among the children. This kind of injustice can be observed between men and women, between adults and children, between weak and strong, young and old and young, majorities and minorities, and of course in the Arab-Israeli conflict. Bad faith and jealousy cause many to slander the other in order to appease their frustrations and inferiority complex. In the past, it was the poor who suffered injustice in the vast majority of cases. Today, the balance begins to weigh more and more in the opposite direction, at least in the so-called developed world. There are suicidal nations which allow masses of people to live on the taxpayers' back on the pretext of belonging to disadvantaged social or ethnic strata, thus preventing these people from recognizing their illness in order to cure it, since the money falls into their pockets every month, and therefore they do never feel the need to tear themselves away from this evil and destructive gear. We must remember the command that invites us to help our neighbor to raise his donkey when it falls on the side of the road, and not to raise him in his place, but by lending him a hand. But the famous saying also reinforces this law when it is said not to give a fish to the poor, but rather a rod, and teach him to fish with it. But I have already seen such cases in Christian environment too, when brothers bicker among themselves and younger believers are simply not able to accept their elders. I know spiritually elder people who have been forced to abandon their community because this law was not respected by those who were in charge of the judgment, the leaders. The blind and excessive defense of the little ones did not even allow him to assert his rights and be listened by the others. They simply wanted to make him confess sins he had not committed, and was thus forced to leave and make his talents grow elsewhere. The message of this commandment for us today remains simple. Always put ourselves on the side of the one who is honorable in the eyes of the Lord, of the one who respects his word. Just as it is forbidden to accept money while making a judgment, we must at all costs avoid relying on appearance and the external signs of wealth or even poverty. Our spirit of compassion and empathy, although being very noble qualities that must absolutely be preserved and maintained, can nevertheless easily mislead us if they are not under the control of the Holy Spirit and if we let them work according to our human feelings.
מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שלום עליכם מלאכי השורש מלאך